Okay, here's the round 6 review of the NRL 2019 season. We're going to start with Cronulla Penrith, and we're going to work our way down the board. I didn't watch 2 games. That was the Warriors Cowboys and the Dragons Sea Eagles. Every other game I've watched. Bits of or all of. And I'm looking forward to the next round. We're going to get this done, and then we're going to do the preview. And then there's some other videos we've got to do as well. There's a lot to pack in this evening, or early hours if you're in Australia. There's a lot to pack in. Let's get going. Cronulla Penrith, 2 very, very misfiring teams in the sense that they have no flow to their game. They've played a lot of scrappy games this season, and both sides are underperforming. I predicted a tight, scrappy affair, and I've been proven right. So occasionally I get my predictions right. Cronulla coming out of this 24-20. It could have been 24-20 to Penrith. Both sides have had the lead in this game. Both sides choked the lead away. It was a scrappy game, and that has underpinned what both these teams have been so far this season, which is underwhelming, underperforming, and misfiring. In Penrith's case, their backline, as a general rule, aren't scoring enough, and in Cronulla's case, they're just generally not performing to par, but they've had a very disrupted off-season with Shane Flanagan being deregistered. The fact that Cronulla are actually grinding out these wins shows a lot of character for the side, considering all their off-field issues. Penrith, they've got a great forward pack, probably the best forward pack in the competition. They've got a very talented backline. They're not scoring enough tries. That is an Ivan Cleary issue. His teams do not score enough tries. It's a well-known fact. Cronulla, they've got an inexperienced coach. They're going through a lot off the field, but that's the sign of a good side, is to win ugly. But they're doing it too often, and even when they lose, they're losing ugly as well. It wasn't the prettiest game. Entertaining as a neutral, not the prettiest game. And that is an issue for both sides. They need to find more fluency in their play. Whether you win or lose, you need to be more fluent, because that creates better rugby, better formations, better flow, better gameplay. And as time goes on, those close defeats will become wins, and then you can build. So Penrith are misfiring, Cronulla are misfiring, Penrith are misfiring more than Cronulla, and that's why Cronulla are further up the table. I can see Cronulla getting some momentum out of this. The Panthers, this has been an ongoing issue with the Panthers now, is their backline doesn't score enough. They make too many errors. Even against a team like the Sharks that are also making a lot of errors, Penrith's errors were more costly at the end of the day. But look, they still managed to score 44 points between them. So it wasn't a boring game. It was a very entertaining game, but also a very frustrating game if you're looking from a tactical point of view and a technical point of view. If you're outside the box looking in, those mistakes are, as a coach, you would rip your hair out. And if you're trying to show students of the game, a match review tape, you can point out so many errors there that are easily avoidable. So as a coaching thing, that would be a great game to look at, to say this is how not to do this is how to effectively do this is how not to do this. There were some great things in the game, and there were some really bad things in the game. Both sides need to cut out those silly errors if they are to progress further in the competition into finals. So we'll have a look at the table after round 7 is complete. We'll have a look at the table where teams are, and the form guide as well. It's been one of them, though, for these two sides, inconsistency. The Bulldogs, South Sydney Rabbitohs, the Bulldogs, their lack of experience again shows. They are a very young side. And the Rabbitohs, post Greg Inglis, scrape out a win. It was a scrappy performance, a lot closer than the scoreline suggests, and it was a pointless second half. Only the second period of play, the first half of the Knights Sharks in the first game of the season for those two sides were scoreless. The second half in this game was scoreless for only the second time, I think it's the first time since 2007, I think the second time in many years. There's not been a scoreless second half for 12 years, basically, and I think it's the second time in NRL history there's been a scoreless second half, or something like that. Something weird like that. It's a weird stat. Second half, scoreless. Canterbury, that lack of experience, though, in their spine, in their forward pack, the injuries to players like Dylan Napa, key players like that, have proved crucial again. South Sydney, they're winning ugly at times. They're not playing the most attractive rugby at times. That's the sign of a good side. 12 months down the line, the Bulldogs will win this game. It's that's learning curve. I can see this being a learning season for them. They're not going to be in contention for finals. They've had some heavy defeats. Some of their closest defeats, they are showing some good signs. And of course, they pushed the Melbourne Storm all the way. They have the talent there, but they don't have the experience. When you're going behind after 2 minutes, their heads didn't drop this time. They got back in. They got the equalising try, and then mistakes crept in, and the game's gone. However, they didn't lose badly, but occasionally they just don't respond. So they responded in this game. They tied it all at 6-6, and then they made some silly mistakes and they lose 14-6. The second half, how there were no tries in the second half, it was exceptionally entertaining, is beyond me. The Bulldogs did have a try disallowed in the first half by Kerrod Holland. It's a 50-50 call, but on another day they get that. Even with that try, they would have still lost the game. So Canterbury are on a learning curve this season. The South Sydney Rabbitohs, they're winning ugly, sign of a good side. Now, for me, the game of the round. I have to admit, this was the game of the round for sheer neutral entertainment. The Melbourne Storm were 20-0 down at one point. They get back to 20 points all, and then in Golden Point, Latrell Mitchell kicks one of the best drop goals I think I'll ever see. They're lining up Cooper Cronk. The Storm believe Cooper Cronk's going to have a field goal attempt, and they pop out to Latrell Mitchell. This game was entertaining, but showed that the Melbourne Storm are human. The Melbourne Storm really were not in it in the first half. The Roosters weren't in it for the first 16 minutes of the second half. Both sides conceding 20 unanswered points each at times. Both coaches will be exceptionally frustrated with this result. And the Melbourne Storm finally lose a game, and they lose at home. That's a shock for the books. The Melbourne Storm are human, and they showed some frailties in this game. They did show some frailties in this game. The fact that they conceded... I mean, some of the tries that the Roosters scored were world class. But at the same time, Craig Bellamy will not be happy with conceding 20 points and 20 unanswered points as well. And being that they were chasing the game. The Roosters then had their panic, but they got through that. And then the last 20 minutes was an arm wrestle, and the Roosters come out on top. And there were some young debutants for the Roosters. It was an understrength Roosters side. There were some injuries in there. They had some young players. The interchange bench, 3 of them had less than 18 games. I think one was a debutant, one had 16 minutes. Another player had like 15 first-grade games on their interchange bench. That was a baptism of fire for some of these young guys. There were some players injured. The Storm... I don't know with the Storm. I think they don't blow teams out. They like the arm wrestle, but they were getting blown out, and they had to arm wrestle their way back in. But 20 points to 0 down, chase it all back. It was an entertaining game. The return fixture is going to be really interesting in the second half of the season, and it's a repeat of the last year's grand final. The Melbourne Storm have been in 3 grand finals in a row. These two could be grand finalists again, for all we know. But the Roosters showing why they're the holders, and the Melbourne Storm showing why they were the previous winners as well. Absolute titanic struggle. The likelihood of the return fixture going into Golden Point is exceptionally high, but the Roosters have still got that one over the Storm from last year as well. That's bragging rights. Epic game though, epic game, fully entertaining. That drop goal by Latrell Mitchell at the end, absolutely stunning. To have the nerve to do that. When Cooper Cronk has got, I think, 24 field goals. Latrell Mitchell, I don't think, has a field goal yet. To have nerves still to do that when you have the more experienced player to your right-hand side. Great decoy. That's clearly a training ground move if it was to be a tied game. They've obviously worked out that this was going to have a likelihood of going to Golden Point. That's some nerves of steel, though. Now, the 2 games I didn't watch, the Warriors, Cowboys. The Cowboys get a win. That's important. They've had a real tough start to the season. Win the first game, lose the next 4, win their 6th game. They finally got that second win, crucial second win. They can build something off this. The Warriors, this is a fear that a lot of people had, was their inconsistency. The Warriors have been exceptionally inconsistent over recent years. Close game, though, again. Only losing by 7 points. So you've got to look how close these games are. 4 point, 8 point, 1 point, 7 point. That's how close these games are. The Dragons, Sea Eagles, 2 point swing. And then after that, there's some bigger gaps. There's a 4 point swing here, and then there's some stupidly one-sided scorelines. But most of the games this weekend were exceptionally close. Maybe 2 tries in it. And the Warriors, they've had some heavy defeats this season. They're starting to shore up that defence. The Cowboys, they needed that win. It's a shot in the arm. It's away from home, which is important. They've also had a trouble build-up to this season, much like the Sharks, with some off-field issues with Ben Barber and of course, the Floods. So they've had a disrupted off-season. They need to build on this second win. They need to get some momentum going to get back in the hunt for finals football, get back in that congested midfield pack, because there could be a separation between the top half and the bottom half. There's a lot of teams sharing a 10-point grouping at the top of the table, joint top. The Cowboys were joint bottom going into this weekend. They've got that second win, crucially important. That gives them a little bit of confidence. Their defence hasn't been great. The Warriors at times have been brilliant and bad. It's their consistency with the Warriors. So the next time I'm able to watch a Warriors or Cowboys game, we'll be very interested. Cowboys defensively, though, they won this game by 7 points. On another day, they could lose by 7 points. And the Cowboys, you've got to look at their defence overall, hasn't been great. They've got one of the worst defences in the competition. It's good to see that they've shored it up a little bit. The Dragons, Sea Eagles. The Dragons have been a real breath of fresh air with their troubled off-season as well. It's another side with a troubled off-season. And of course, Gareth Widdop is out for a long period of time. Lost the team captain. They're still getting wins. Corbin Sims out as well. They're missing some big name players, and they again sign up a good side. They win a tight game, 12-10. Sea Eagles, they're not big point scorers, the Sea Eagles, but defensively they shored up a little bit. They've also got a bit of a leaky defence. They've been winning a lot of games like this. Now they lose one. So the Sea Eagles starting much like the Panthers and Sharks to get involved in these tight, scrappy games, low scoring games. The Dragons, though, they're grinding these results out, with some key players missing, and that is the sign of a good side. Absolutely, they are winning these tight games, which on another day they could lose, and they're a dark horse for finals football, and they're a dark horse for the grand final in my eyes. They are a dark horse. They should not be underestimated. The Sea Eagles, I think they've got possibly one of the weaker squad depths, and I think that's going to start to tell as time goes on. And they're not scoring enough points, much like Penrith. They're underwhelming in attack, but defensively in this game they shored up, and that's been another weakness for them. Now we get on to some of the bigger, more blown out scorelines. The Gold Coast Titans, great second win on the bounce. That's some momentum now. They've got momentum. They're off the bottom of the table. And they score 38 points. They don't score this many tries that often. So they're starting to score points. Newcastle Knights just imploded. They absolutely imploded. They fell apart completely. They've been a prickly side to play against. While they're not scoring a lot of points, they've been very restrictive in giving points to the opposition. They've been very good defensively. But they completely had a meltdown, and they're starting to struggle. Their lack of try scoring is hurting them, but their defence completely fell apart. Against Gold Coast, completely fell apart. That I watched bits of this game and I just was in horror watching it. I have a soft spot for the Knights. I like an underdog story. I know people who've got a soft spot for the Titans who like an underdog story, but this was so one-sided. It was painful to watch. But I will rewatch the game again tonight. I've got it recorded and saved, so I will rewatch the game. But it was not a great performance by the Knights. They brought a lot of players in, like Edric Lee. You got David Clemmer been brought in. The issue is gelling those new signings with the players already there, and the issue is they're not scoring enough tries. And defensively in this game as well, they completely just fell apart. They made some poor decisions, and they surrendered pretty much. They surrendered. They held up the white flag, and that was it. Gold Coast, morale boosting second win on the trot. They've got some momentum. They can look up the table now. They've proven they can score. They can score a lot of points. That will give them confidence. It will give their halves confidence. And it will give their outside back some confidence, and even the forward pack will give all the players a lot of confidence going forward. The Knights, I don't know where they go from here. They've got to figure out how to score points, and they need to erase this defeat from the memory very quickly. Very quickly. They need to look back at how they played in the opening rounds, where they were tight, physical affairs, they were prickly, they were hard to play against. They made it difficult for teams to settle. They need to find that win they've had over the Sharks. They need to find that unity and that team dynamic of playing together and keeping it tight, because they were just completely destroyed in this game. Then we get to the Raiders Broncos. Sutton and Bateman, the new Englishmen, get their first tries. The Brisbane Broncos are in trouble. The Brisbane Broncos are in serious trouble. They had an opportunity to win their second game of the season, get some momentum going, get some confidence, and the Raiders raided them pretty much. The Raiders are, again, dark horses. They weren't expected to be this good. The Broncos were not expected to be this bad. That's how many defeats on the bounce now? It's 4 defeats on the bounce. I think it's the worst start the Broncos have ever had to an NRL season, or a season ever. They've only ever missed finals football twice. And even then they had a 50% win percentage, so the Broncos are in serious trouble. They are struggling. They're losing tight games, they're losing blowouts, they're losing on golden point. They're making a lot of uncharacteristic mistakes. They played better in this game. They had a chance to win the game. Canberra, my team, were lucky to win it, I feel. But at the same time, Bateman and Sutton have stepped up with Whitehead and Hodgson. The English those forwards all have stepped up. The fact that Whitehead and Bateman can play 80 minutes now is terrifying. These are international quality players. Sutton has yet to break into the England setup, but it's a matter of time. And of course, the Brisbane Broncos, they're just not playing well. They were again chasing the game. They get back into it, they take a lead, and then they fall apart again. The Broncos are chasing too many games. Their lack of experience in the full pack again shown up. And I don't know what is Darius Boyd still captain material? Is he still starting material? And defensively at times, some of their reads were poor, and they did, cough up and had to chase. And you're not going to get back into a game when you're chasing it. Canberra could have had more points on the board. They could have. Brisbane fought their way back into the game and then throw it away. That is basically the story of Brisbane's season. They can't get a win. They can't get, they're chasing games. That's a part of their problem, is they're allowing teams a head start of 6, 10, 12, 14, 18 points, and then they're chasing it. And then they get some tries in there. They get back in the game, and then the opposition will have that second wind and convert that second win into a win. That's the story of Brisbane's season. Then finally, good Easter Monday's game, the opening of Westbank New Parramatta Stadium. Wow. Parramatta scoring 51 points. The West Tigers at one point had 100% set completion and was still 30 points to 6 down. Don't think that's ever happened before. Parramatta just destroyed the West Tigers. The West Tigers, Robbie Farah went off very early on with a concussion. Alvaro went off for the Eels literally on the first play. The Eels were down a man for 78 minutes on the interchange. They put 51 points on the board. Absolutely stunning performance by Parramatta in attack. Without Blake Ferguson was a last-minute decision to leave out. He was listed as in the squad for the match, considering the rib injury he sustained. And what a great response to being nilled by Canberra last weekend. They couldn't score a point against Canberra. They were held out. They were nilled. They put 51 points on the board. They've made a statement saying, beware. They've had a very good start to the season. Very understated. West Tigers, I don't know where they go from here. This is the same West Tigers issues that they've had for the last how many seasons? They win the opening couple of rounds, they get some momentum, but then they have these massive one-sided defeats. I've seen this so many times with the West Tigers that I don't know what to expect from them. They've had a good start to the season. They've got some wins in there. They're competitive, but it was just one-way traffic. One-way traffic. A lot of mistakes in the second half. When the second half came about and they're getting hammered, their good set completion disappeared. Their kick options were poor. Their final kick options were poor. They were not kicking into space. They were kicking right down the fullback's throat. Clint Gutherson, for Mitch Moses, that opening try that's just a piece of brilliance. One pass and gone. The West Tigers, they need to look at their last kick options. They need to look about getting Benji Marshall possibly back into the lineup. They need to look at their discipline. And their forward pack was brutalised. So they need to look at their forward pack and adjust their tactics, because they were brutalised down the middle. The outside backs didn't take up enough of the hit-ups into contact with ball. They were deservedly brutalised. For me, the games of the weekend with the Melbourne Storm South, Sydney Roosters, the Eels Tigers, the Raiders Broncos, and for the performance of the weekend, Gold Coast Titans, because that was their best performance so far. They just, again, put Newcastle to the sword. So there were some really good games, some scrappy games as well, but you can't have every game brilliant. And only 2 massive blowouts, but all the other games were really close, less than 7 points in it. And there's a couple in there with some big scorelines, but it shows how much parity the league has. It really does. Hopefully Newcastle can bounce back, and West Tigers, God knows where they go from here. But there we go. Thank you very much for watching. I will have the preview of round 7 coming up. Keep your eyes peeled. And I'll have some other videos also for you soon. Please like and subscribe, place your comments below, and I shall see you soon.